Welcome back to the Exchange Place podcast, y'all. Hey, y'all. It is your host, Deborah Faith, and I am back with my grief to gratitude. I am honoring the voice of a man in my life and Black men in my life. And we have none other than Adrian D Davis with us. What's
What's
up?
up? What's up? I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for
Yeah,
inviting me.
listen. I listen. Look, it's an honor to have you on. Seriously, you don't. I guess you don't know this. Of course, I was about to say I met you online because we haven't met in person ever yet.
Yeah,
But got introduced to you by a friend of mine and loved your story. Have sat in on some of your Bible kickbacks, which are amazing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, your grief, good grief, I think it is,
Yeah,
and a couple of other things. And the one thing that I'm doing in the season of grief to gratitude is honoring men who near or far, but men who have spoken into my life, whether they know it or not. And you are one of those, sir. You are one of those. Like, I really want all the men to know that come on, but I really want you to know that I see you. I see your heart. I see your heart for people. I see what, you're doing, and I see where you're going. Even in times I think you probably don't see where you're going completely, but
I don't see nothing.
yeah, listen. Well, I there are people out here who see you, and I
I
really
appreciate
wanted you to know that I see you. You are forever dropping gems. You have a brilliant mind, an amazing communicator. You are a podcaster. Look at you, got your brand on. I had that hat on earlier, y'all, and I got another one. So,
Hey, see,
hey.
you in there? You in there?
Yeah, definitely in there. But I really wanted to get to know Adrian A.D. Davis as a person.
Mhm.
I've talked about in some of the previous episodes that I've done thus far. And of course, this is in honor of my dad, who's no longer here. We lost him in 2016, August of 2016, to cancer. And my dad was a structure in my life that I definitely honored while he was here.
Mhm.
But I do believe that you don't really understand the weight a person holds until they're no longer here.
Yeah.
And today's talk, I really do want to call it the road to recovery. I think my dad was um, also that person. I always say that I had the opportunity to know my dad. Two versions of him. I'll say that. And I love his story more because of that, because the man that he was when I was a little girl was not the man who left here. And I watched him become a better father, a better person, a better, you know what I mean? It just wasn't this kind of like, there's so much emphasis on men kind of like getting it right and doing it all right. And my dad wasn't that, but he was a great man.
Yeah.
He really, really was. And I honor him today. But I want to know about who is AD? Pastor AD, the comma, the trailblazer, the innovator. Who is Adrian?
Um, for me, I would I would deem myself as simple yet complex. I have so many different facets of me, so many things that like when I feel like when God created me, he created such he gave me a lot of gifts and creativity and the ability to do a lot of different things. And so at times it's very hard for me to pinpoint in one particular thing, like, hey, I'm supposed to be doing this. But I'm just a creative. I love to create. I love to build something from nothing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always interested in that process. And then also, a thing about me is um, um, a prophet just 2 weeks ago. I went to this church and Dr. Kalita Forbes, she said, you always have a hard time. She said, I can tell. She said, you always have a hard time. Like, give me like your elevator speech of what you do. She said, it's this simple. She said, you bring God's ideas to the earth. She says, and that's in any way that you want to do it. That could be through preaching, that could be through podcasting, that could be through styling, because I love fashion and creating in fashion space. She said that could be through directing, because I'm doing my first documentary right now, directing that and producing that. And it could be through acting, because I'm an actor as well. And so she says, you just bring God's ideas to the earth. And so that's me. But it's so many facets and so many compartments of me. It makes it challenging at times to kind of answer that question. But I'm complex, but then simple all at the same time.
Okay. Okay. I love that. It makes me think of boxes are for things and not for people.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. So don't let them box you in. You can do it
Yeah.
all.
I refuse to. I
Yeah.
refuse to. But I mean, for so long, I thought that it had to be a certain type of way, or it had to look a certain type of way, or it had to be done a certain type of way. And
Hmm.
I am just now at the age of whatever age I am. But at this age, I'm just now embracing the fact that it's okay to do all of the things and be as innovative and as creative as I desire to be. And that's been my biggest thing, is to settle in that and to really um, rest with that thought and that theory. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what was AD like as a child? Was AD
Oh,
still complex?
I was, man. It's so crazy. Like my mom would talk about this. My mom would talk about me and how I was raised. My mom, she always talks about that I was so kind of self sufficient. Like, she said she would give me like pots and pans, and I would sit on the floor for hours with pots and pans and play music. Or she said like I would take a box, like she would give me like a big box, and I would just play with the box and create scenarios and create people and all types of stuff with that
Hmm.
box. She said, and sometimes like she would even forget, like she said it'd be hours go by and be like, did he fall asleep? And she'll walk in there and I'm still playing with that
Still
same
playing.
box. She was like, she was like, I was always kind of like a loner, but but I would love to be around people and lead people. She would talk about that. She knew I was like a natural leader. So I think like the complex or the simple side of me is I like to be alone, and you can leave me alone in a room and I'm gonna watch movies and I'm gonna just chill out and I'm gonna be good for the rest of the day.
Hmm.
But then the complex side is I gain energy from being around community. I love community and I love that. But then once that time is up, oh, I'm off to myself.
Yeah.
like so as a child, I was that same way. But just throughout school, interacting with people was my go-to. Like if wherever the people were, I was there. And then senior in high school, I was a drum major, so I was leading the band and doing all of that type of stuff and dancing and traveling. I was dancing background for an artist. And
Wait,
um,
you dance?
yeah, that was my, like that was my dominant gift. Yeah,
Really?
dancing was my thing. Like, I did it for years, and like a lot of people like that meet me now don't even know that side of me. I think I went to this studio probably like 2 months ago. There's a guy that I work with. He's a background dancer for quite a few artists. And
Hmm.
I went by a studio and they were in there, and he doesn't know I can dance. He knows I do branding and marketing stuff. And so he invited me to come do some stuff for their studio. And so I'm in there and I was like, oh yeah, like that move. And so I got up and I started doing it. He was like, dude, wait a minute, I gotta film this. I was like, no, like he was like, bro, like you can, I didn't know that. I did not know that. He was like, Instagram would go crazy if they saw a video. I was like, yeah, I don't even show that side of me. Like, but yeah, like I danced all my life. Like
Oh
I, I,
wow.
I, I wanted to be, I wanted to do that for a profession, like for the rest of my life. I wanted to make it a career. Dancing wasn't as big as it is now. Like if I would have stuck with it, it really could possibly been a thing.
Hmm.
But back then, like my grandparents and my mom, like even they were like a career dancing, background dance. Like, yeah, this is cool to do right now. Like,
For
but nah,
fun, yeah.
this ain't a forever thing. And then plus, like from the South, it was just like, you know, if I would have lived somewhere else geographically, if I would have lived in LA like I live now when I was
Mhm.
being raised, probably the spectrum of my family and the thought process of my family would have been expanded to know that this could be a thing. But a lot of times, like when you're in the South, if you are creative and you're super artsy or whatever the case is, they don't look at arts as a means of a career. They look at it as a means of a hobby. And so like where you're raised plays a part in what you feel that you can obtain,
Yeah.
and so shaking off those limiting beliefs and knowing that like, hey, I was created to be creative and I can, do all those things. And so just being raised that way, I was, raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was like one of those things like, you from the South is what you do, you just get a good paying job. And that's it. Like,
Yeah.
our aspirations was to work at Little Debbie or work at Coca-Cola factory or work at a place called Shaw, because they pay a lot of money. And that was like the aspiration, like to get a great job. And
Mm.
it wasn't about doing what your heart desired. It wasn't about being creative. It wasn't about doing what you love. It was just about like, hey, like get a job and work there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us grew up that way. I know
Yeah.
I grew up that way. I tell my children now, like, do what you love, like find the thing that you love and own it. Like whatever that is, own it. I definitely don't think I know for me, I think I'm pretty sure I'm older than you. We won't say my age, but I'm pretty sure I am.
Yeah.
Um and I know just growing up, it was like, get a good job and stay there. I remember my dad, I had been at a job I work in tech professionally for over 21 years. And my dad was like, I was leaving this company. And, you didn't leave companies back then. You got a
Yeah,
good
man.
job, they got good benefits.
Yeah, you worked there
Where you going? Forever, ever.
forever, forever.
Forever. I got a job in the city, in New York City, and my dad called me every single day, because he couldn't figure out. He was like, "They're gonna pay you what?" He was like, "That was my first six-figure job." So he was like, "What they gonna pay you?" He's like, "Oh no." He's like, "Are you sure you gonna be able to do what they want to do?" He would call me every single day. Is it getting hard yet? Because I don't want you to be without a job.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He just, I,
Wow.
I so wish he was here today. A lot of what I do is because of him. I
Mhm.
think I had my dad for 18 months. We found out he had fourth stage cancer, which was in his lungs, his esophagus, which ultimately spread to his brain. And I just remember him at the end telling me like, "Oh, I thought I had time." And I was just like, "Time? What do you mean?" He's like, "Cuz he never really got to retire. He by the time he was retired, he was a welder and he was a hardworking man. So
Your
up at
dad was a
4 o'clock,
welder?
he was.
My dad was too.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, my dad
Oh,
was a welder.
yeah. And he
That's
was,
crazy.
yeah, he was a welder and was great at what he did, but never really took like positions up. He's like, "I just want to do what I do." So he was a welder my whole entire life, a welder and a gambler, but that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But he was a welder up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to work at 5, just a hardworking man. And he still was working when we found out he had cancer. So he was just like, "I just never got the opportunity to fish." My dad's a country boy from North Carolina, Warrenton. So he's like, he wanted to go fishing and wanted to go hunting. And he just never had the opportunity to do that. And when he wanted to, it was too late. He was, we were going back and forth to chemo and he was so sick. And on his deathbed, I was just like, "I promise you, I won't be you." Like we're so similar in work ethic and being very sacrificial.
Yeah.
And, me I've been a single mom for quite some time. So just my focus was always on the boys and what was going on with them. And I wasn't a dancer, but I used to be a singer. I'm still a singer before
I
the
was about to
Lord.
say, used to be, you still sing.
I still sing a lot. I really do. In
Okay.
church, in church, in church. But
Right.
like I was really pursuing, like I was like, we'll talk about that another time, but like in pretty much in the industry of like going towards that. And ended up getting pregnant with my son. That's a whole nother thing. And once I got pregnant with him, it was just like, oh, my life has to completely change. My focus is on my children. And that was kind of my life. So watching my dad for those 18 months, all I saw was my future.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
probably the most scary thing that I've experienced because it was like, and I know this sounds crazy, but it was almost like watching myself die. Like this is
Mm,
your end. You know what I mean? This is where
mm,
you are going to end up if you don't change something.
yeah.
Yeah. So I promised him, I said, I'm going to die empty because I feel like my dad died with a lot of things in him and that he just never tapped into. He was just in this structure of, like you said, kind of like you get a job, you work there for however many years, you retire from there, and that's just it.
Yeah.
Following passion and purpose and all of that just really didn't exist. And in his death, it's like I found myself.
Yeah.
Um, and I hate that he's not here, but I'm grateful. Like every day I'm grateful that, and maybe that's the gratitude, right? I'm
Yeah.
grateful to have had that experience with him because it really changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I think that a lot of times God gives us like this up close view of people's lives, right? And what they have experienced and how they endured and what they went through. And then he allows us to see it and then say, wow, like, could this be me?
Mm.
Like you said, like you start seeing yourself and then you start to see like, hey, and not to say my dad lived a bad life. It's just
Mm-mm.
that we want every generation to get better. Like every generation to get better. If we duplicate the same things that our dads did, then the generation didn't get better. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's almost like, was that life in vain if we just
Mm.
did the same thing? And so in the effort to not allow that life to be in vain, it's a matter of okay, this we can become better because of this, you know, because I got a chance to see this and I got a chance to see what was different. My dad was killed in a car wreck in 2018,
Mm.
and but I tell people all the time, like my father, the car accident physically killed him, but my father dealt with so much regret
Mm.
that my dad lived in the past. And I watched that even with myself of battling regret. So I make decisions like not decisions very quickly, but like when it comes to taking risks, I'm okay with taking risks.
Mm-hmm.
But the where people struggle to make a decision where they mull over things for months and years, be like, should I move, should I move, should I move? Me, I'm on the faster side. I go ahead and make the move, but on the back end I'll go into that, should I have done this, should I have done this, should I have done this? And I will live in regret, and I will live in the past a lot. And I realized that it was a byproduct of, even my father and so forth and so on. So, um, a lot of times it's a matter of learning from the previous generation and then applying and saying, well, hey, if they dealt with that or if they did not live to their full capacity, I'm going to honor them by living to my full capacity. I'm going to honor them by not living in regret. I'm going to honor them by going after these particular things.
I love that. So what would you say to somebody who is stuck in the past, um, who struggles in that area? Because I definitely know what that can look like. I think sometimes when we've put things off, and I can say this, I know women struggle with it. I can't talk from the male perspective, but I would love yours, in the sense of like feeling like certain things are too late. And I had focused again so much on my children. At the time I looked up, I'm like, how did I get here? Like, how old am I? And like, how am I doing this now? And, questioning kind of like, again, the giving up singing. Like, I love music. I love, you know what I mean? I love that space. And it was a struggle. I think more of a mental battle, because I will say I'm similar to you. Like, I kind of just like leap and kind of ask questions later. But like, what would you say to somebody who's maybe in that predicament or stuck in that place, and they want to move forward?
Um, you know, I I put it like this, like because it's it's easy to be stuck into that place. It's very
Mhm.
easy. Like, and what I tend to do is that I tend to challenge myself to WTD. It's win the day. Like that's all I can do. And I think we spend so much time worried, processing and thinking about all the things that could happen in the future, thinking about where we could be, thinking about all types of situations concerning it, that we end up losing this day thinking about the next day. And so my challenge is to address and feel what I feel. Like what you feel. I tell people this all the time. Like, don't be so quick to just run over what you feel. Like, feel what you feel. And I think for a lot of men, especially, we don't get the space to feel. We just, it's like, do. And a lot of men, we're raised on performance based relationships. Like,
Mhm.
so we're only as good as we perform to be. Like, so, the moment we lose the job, the moment our money is hit, I know even for me, I deal with that when it comes to like, if my money's off, everything's off. Like,
Mm.
because you know it's like you're raised to be a provider, and so, but if you're stuck in that emotion of what you feel, you want to hurry up and overlook what you feel to get to you being a provider, to get to doing, and to get to, and so we get so consumed with doing. And so what I tell someone that's dealing with that, man, like, just try to win the day and acknowledge what you feel. Don't play it, don't downplay it. Hey, I feel this way, but understand that your feelings are not facts, but your feelings are true. And it's okay to feel, but understand that your feelings could be lying to you. Your feelings could tell you that you're not enough. Your feelings could tell you that that you're always going to be in this place, that you're stuck here. You lose hope because of it. Um, I've battled depression. I've battled suicidal ideations. I've, dealt with all of that. And mainly it was because losing hope, feeling like it was going to always be this way, because I'm so focused in on the end of the month, but I'm not thinking about today. And so I lose today thinking about the end of the month. If you think about the 30th and you keep thinking about the 30th and you keep thinking about the 30th and you're thinking about the 30th on the second, you're thinking about the 30th on the third, you think about the 30th on the fourth, guess what? You're losing the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. You're losing all of those days. And we're so focused in. And then let's say, what happens if the 29th, whatever you were worried about on the 30th shows up? You wasted
All those
29
years.
days.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
thinking about what was already taken care of the 29th. Like,
Mm.
so what I tell people, man, is just try your best. If at all costs, I know it's hard, I know it's challenging, but just try your best to live in the day. Like, the Bible is true. Like, don't worry
Mm.
about tomorrow, for tomorrow has its own worries. Like, and I know we don't, I know it's hard to do, but the reality of it is, like, yo, like, it's a thing.
It's really a thing.
It's
It
really,
really is a thing. It
it
really
really
is
is a
a
thing.
thing.
Like, to just try your best to just, hey, I'm gonna live in today, and I'm gonna let today be what it is.
Yeah. So you mentioned like you feel like men don't have a space for that. Do you think that's from just culture not providing a space, or do you think that let's talk male to female? Do you think that women provide, or how can we provide better spaces for the men in our lives, and not just romantically, but I'm talking about sons and friends and cousins and brothers. Like how can we better support men in that place?
Yeah. Well, for one, I think a few situations play a factor. I think it's culture, and also I think men, we played a part in that. We because at some point culture told us that our feelings didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, I actually just did a live even before I got on here because I was just so aggravated because I shared something that a tweet a man or a post a man put up, and he said that having a woman that does not know how to control her mouth is almost the equivalent to having a man that doesn't know how to control their hands.
Yeah.
Abuse is, abuse. And so when I shared that, like I reshared it on my story. And when I tell you my DMs from women, they're not the same. It's like you're giving an excuse for a man to be Ike Turner because a woman has a smart mouth. And I said, this lets me know y'all don't read. I didn't say for a smart mouth. Having a smart mouth and verbal abuse are not the same thing.
Not at all.
Like all of us have smart mouths. We're witty. We say certain things. We can have a smart mouth. You can have a smart mouth, but it does just because they have a smart mouth does not equate to abusive. And if you talk to a counselor would tell you walking somebody through healing of verbal abuse is the same thing as walking through somebody with physical abuse.
It
It is the
absolutely
same
is.
thing. Abuse is abuse. But what happens is majority of men are not. Now I do know some men that have dealt with physical abuse, but majority of men aren't being physically abused. So what we tend to do is that we tend to prize the physical abuse and then so what does that automatically let men feel? That okay, you can talk to me any type of way. You can bash my character. You can talk about me as a man. Tell me I'm less than a man. You can call me out my name. You can talk to me any type of way, and I'm just supposed to deal with it. But then, if I put my hands on you, then then I'm written off forever. I'm no good. I'm this and this. So what about the man that is in a relationship and he loves this woman, but also dealing with the verbal abuse? He just has to
Mm,
deal with it because it's not physical. Like,
yeah.
and I think that culture plays a part, but then I think it's also us because we have shut down communicating what we feel in an effort to not seem as though we're weak. So the moment we allow culture to shut down our voices when we wanted to communicate what we felt, then now we played a part in the act of what culture said that we could communicate or what culture said that we could feel. So
Yeah.
if there's not a safe space, is I believe it's partially culture, but then I believe that we play a part in it as well. We
Yeah.
Because we downplayed what we felt. We became numb to certain actions. We became, oh well, it's abusive, so we just gonna deal with it, whatever the case is, and not even knowing that we're being talked to in an abusive way or being approached in an abusive way. We just kind of deal with it. So I think and the other part of your question is, what can women do? And I'll say this, and this goes back to me sharing the post,
Mm-hmm.
that every time we share an experience, it is not to downplay your experience. Like if a man
Yeah.
shares an experience of verbal abuse, it's not to downplay your experience with physical abuse. He's just sharing his experience. So I think that, and what women can do is be more open to hear and not be on the defense of, oh, so you saying that what y'all deal with is worse than what we did. Like it doesn't have to be. And I think that we have this thing of, men have it worse, women have it worse, men have it worse, men like, and it shouldn't be that way. It's like, yo, like we're sharing the experience,
Experiences.
and we both have had terrible experiences. But when are we going to come along for us to help mend each other, like
Yeah.
to have better experiences? And I don't have to downplay yours to to prize mine above yours as if oh, I've had more agony.
Yeah, it's
You know
like
what I'm
my
saying?
pain is worse.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and that's what we do. My pain is worse. Literally. So I did the live. I wasn't going to share it now, but I did share it on my page. I'm probably going to take it down because somebody literally just commented right before I got on here and was like, "Well, nobody has died to physical abuse," and I didn't have the time, but I am once I get off here. I'm gonna
Yeah.
like I
I
didn't have.
think so I sit on the other side of that conversation from the women's perspective because I don't think I've always, but I do realize how powerful my voice is. And I feel like a lot of women may not understand the power of when you speak to a man, like
Mm-hmm,
you know what I mean? And I have sons, so I know what my mouth can do without ever laying hands on them. And I'm
mm-hmm.
aware of that. I think when we, because there are a lot of mute men in this world that you're just like, oh, I had somebody say, well, my grandfather ain't never say anything. I say, yeah, he trust me, he wanted to, but he got so tired of saying and not getting or being heard or understood. I think there's such a wide gap. I totally agree with you. I think that's why dating is hard. Even having brother and sister relationships are sometimes hard, that you're hearing one another, but people are not really listening to understand, listening to get an understanding of where people are. And we are losing, a lot of men to suicide and like, oh, I never knew it's like they internalize a lot. You got to be very careful in what you're saying. I don't think everybody truly understands that. I would love to see more. I mean, that's part of why I do the show in general is like, I want to see more positivity. I feel like, the podcast space is a little, it's loose, I'll say the least, of who I feel like, and not all of them, because there are some great shows on huge platforms, but I feel like a lot of the shows that are on really big platforms are not normally encouraging the bridge the gap thing or
Yeah.
not having crucial conversations that probably need to be had and why is this going on? And maybe not even maybe, I know my heart for that is like it literally comes from my dad. My dad was a veteran as well. He struggled with PTSD most of his life, which I didn't even know what that was as a child. All I knew is, there were periods of times that he was locked himself in a closet with his gun, like, and that for me as a child was normal. You know what I mean? But I knew that he struggled. He struggled with depression. What I back then I didn't know what that was, like wouldn't get out of bed, and my grandfather would have to come get him and take
Yeah.
him to the doctor to make sure he was all right. So it didn't look like, I think, and a lot of times depression, depending on the person, it can look very different. I'm in school to be a therapist, so I'm surrounded by
Mm,
people who are, struggling in different areas. But
yeah.
I think about my dad, and I think, like I said in the beginning, I love his road to recovery because I feel like even in the stuff that he did that I did not like as a child, I didn't get like where it's like, oh, I excuse that. No, I still don't think it was great. I still don't, approve of a lot of things that he did. However, I did get understanding of the why behind that. And that helped me tremendously. It helped our relationship. It helped me like the man that I speak of when I'm like grieving is not you know what I mean? It's not the one that I knew when I was a little girl. And I just think it's so much, there's a wealth of just experience in that of like my dad was a really good man, like he was, but he was not without fault. He
Yeah.
was not.
Yeah.
And I hope even throughout this episode and maybe some other things that we do down the line, like people get that, like, you know what I mean? Like we really have to be careful. Like what comes out of this mouth is just as much as somebody really being abused. And I'm sure we'll get tons of comments on this.
Oh
It's
yeah.
controversial, but it is because it's like we don't talk about, maybe it's not in front of that, like, oh well, you spoke that at that period of time, but that planted a seed that could have grown over time, and that person taking their life down the line may have had something to do with all of those things that got spoken to them. You know what I mean? And I don't think we think about that
No, we
until
don't.
it, yeah, until it
We
hits
don't.
our home.
Yeah, because And the reason why we don't think about that is because sometimes it's not an instant thing, right? So like when we talk about physical abuse, it's like instant, right? It's like, you hit somebody, they bruise up, like it's like instant, it's like instantaneous, response to an action. But we don't think about the person that has been verbally abused for years. And so like when that person writes that comment that I haven't got a chance to respond back to yet, but I am going to light into them, because I'm like, you need to check your numbers, because even you saying nobody's died to verbal abuse, that is a lie, because there's multiple people that have killed themselves because they were in verbal abuse situations, men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I know of both sexes. I
Yeah.
pastored, I pastored a woman that was in a verbal abusive situation. She felt hopeless. She felt that she could not get out. She killed herself. I know a man that was in a homosexual relationship, and the other man was very verbally abusive. I was pastoring him, and he felt like he could not get out. He felt like the man would track him down and keep, he said he would never hit him, but the things that he would say would just tear him down. And he felt hopeless and he killed himself. So like, and to say somebody, doesn't die because of verbal abuse, then what about all of the LGBTQ community that, commit suicide because of bullying? They weren't,
Mm-hmm.
like it's plenty of people that weren't physically hit, but but verbally abused, that drove people to, and it may take time, it may take, whatever. But and I think that because we love the, talking about what is instant. So if something happens in this instant, then we like, oh, like that's so much bigger. It's, like, and I'm not, and I'm not, again, I'm not trying to say one is worse than the other. I'm just saying abuse is abuse across the board.
It is.
So all of it has a space and can be communicative about this particular space across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, we don't look at the magnitude of our words. We don't
Yeah.
we don't look at the magnitude of, oh, and we just feel like, oh, I'm just sharing this and I'm just talking this and I'm just saying this, but we don't understand the magnitude of our words. We don't understand the impact that our words will have, lasting effects on people. And when you got adults, and here's the reality: us, even as adults, we still can recant and remember certain words that were said to us years and years and years ago. So you can't tell me verbal abuse is not a thing or it's not as impactful when you have people that are 40 plus still dealing with emotional traumas from what was said to them as children. You can't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't.
I hate that saying. What is the saying? Sticks and stones may break my
So
bones, but words will never hurt
I
me. I
tell people,
just
I tell people all the time, if you say that phrase, you just haven't heard the right words yet.
yeah. That's true. That's true. It's so true. It is so true. I don't know. We're in such a weird space. I feel like, and I feel like there, like we have to do something, and it's time to be done. Like it needs to be done quickly, because I feel like we're getting further and further apart, and
Yeah.
especially when we talk about the next generations. My oldest son is 21, just turned 21, and just to see like even what relationships look like, I feel like with them is just it's scary. It's very scary. It is very, very scary. Not that we were doing, I think we have this thing too of like, let's go back to the olden days. I don't know if the olden days was that great either.
No,
I don't know if
no,
they was I don't know if they were that great
I
either,
don't
but
know
I
about that.
I don't know about that. I mean, I get what people mean when they say that, but I don't. I think if we really truly examined even the past, like I don't know if it was some stuff in there, you know.
You feel me?
Yeah, it was.
So if we don't want to, yeah,
I'm not. It
yeah,
was
I don't
some.
know if you,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
trust
gonna
me,
drink my water. Look, I'm like.
I don't know if we want to relive that.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's getting back. I think it's like recreating something that we have not seen yet.
Yeah,
And I know there are healthy relationships and healthy marriages and all of that that exists, but I just feel like it's a gap in general. Like it's hard to have a conversation sometimes with people. It's like, did I trigger you? Like what?
Oh,
What?
listen, like, but I think it's it's such a it's such a delicate place because as we grow, we are being more open to sharing and talking. But then
Mm,
also as we grow, we are being very defensive about experiences in which that we don't understand or don't know. So it's like if I never experienced that, then let me be defensive because no, my pain was worse than yours. And this like, and so it's like, it's like, can we just be open to hearing and can we just be open to receiving someone's experience and
yeah.
being okay with that without demonizing them or without belittling their experience and their traumatic events? And so I know it's challenging. I know it's different. I know it's hard, but I'm like, yo, like yo, we got to open up ourselves, man, to be, because the more we talk about it, and I think that that's the great side of it. We're talking about things more.
Yeah.
We're talking about the mental health, especially within the African American community more. We're talking about grief and death and how we feel more. And I think that can be great. But then also the more that we talk, then it also opens up people to be more expressive about their experience and their situation. And then it makes everybody feel like they got a voice. And because everybody does have a voice,
They
then they
do.
feel like they can say whatever they want to against your experience or whatever, because their voice matters too. And it's like, so it becomes hard. So I think what it's also doing is like the more we talk about things, it also is putting more people into a shell because they're like, if I share, it's going to be judged so much more harshly because everybody has an opinion about anything that I've dealt with. And so now I don't know if even I want to say anything. And that's what
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys, me personally, as I coach and counsel guys, that a lot of guys are saying, I'm just not saying anything because the moment I say something or share something is going to be attacked.
So let me ask you this: since men aren't talking, what makes you talk so freely? Like I've 100% heard you talk about your depression, and I love that because I feel like you don't know who's watching you. There are younger men who are watching you. I'm sure peers and even older men who feel like I can't speak. Like what makes AD, have the controversial or crucial conversations that other people won't?
I think for me, because even in being this open and being this transparent about things that I've dealt with, I got a video about me. I got a YouTube video about me talking about I'm mad at God. I got a video, YouTube video about my sexual experiences of the past and me being molested at 13 and also me being raped at 13. And people say all the time, like, man, and I've had people tell me like, oh, well, I think you do that as a ploy to get people to buy into you, you know, but what I realized was being open is so foreign that it's going to be judged
Mm.
because we live in so much secrecy that secrecy is more welcomed than being open and transparent about your personal experiences. I'm like, what do I gain by telling somebody, my experience with being molested at 13? What do I gain by being open and honest about me being raped by a woman at 13? What do I gain by that? That is not to get brownie points with anybody. I don't know anybody that's saying, oh my God, I'm about to be his friend because he was molested and raped. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm about to give him some money because he like, that's, that's not a tactic to pull people in. It is a tactic to let people know that there are men that deal with there are men that deal with life situations and that are not afraid to communicate what they've dealt with, because I know so many other men that are dealing with this in secrecy, that are dealing with depression in secrecy, that are dealing with suicidal ideations in secrecy.
Mm.
And what I realize is that the longer we keep things hidden, the more the enemy wins the battle. And
That
if we keep thinking that we're by ourselves and we believe that we're by ourselves, guess what we're going to do? The enemy's going to get us by ourselves and whoop our tail. Like that's what happens. The more and more I realized in my own life, the more and more I was quiet about things, the enemy was winning. He was like winning. But then when I opened up about certain things, Yeah, it was judged. Yeah, it was criticized. Yeah, it made people feel like they knew me. Yeah, it gave people ammunition to talk about me. Yeah, it gave people, oh well, he dealt with this and he dealt with this, and then people try to overanalyze everything that you do. Yes, but also at the same time, I've had men in my, communicate with me, email me, DM me, whatever the case is, text me, call me, and tell me by hearing that it allowed me to express to, and it may not be on the public platform. It may be with the person in which that they love. It could be
Mm.
with their wife. It could be with their girlfriend. It could be with their friends. It could be with their cousins. It could be with their aunties, their uncles, whoever. People say, yo, like I watched that and I felt that I could share my story with this particular person or be more open with this particular person. And for me, that's the win.
That
The win is allowing people to share their experiences and communicate their experiences and not feel that they're less than because they dealt with X, Y, and Z. You are We are human. We're dealing with life and we're dealing with all that life hands us, and we're trying to deal with it the best way we possibly can. And for me, communicating about it became a coping mechanism for myself to
mm.
make me feel as though this is not going to beat me in silence. Now, I'm very careful about when I share because it's a very thin line between a testimony and advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talk about things in which that I have a control over. I may not always be all the way out of it, but I have control over it, meaning that I have it, um, I have it so under control that I can hear the negative talk about it and then not pull me back into a space or whatever the case is. I have control over it. Now, advertisement is where if I'm saying, oh yeah, like, because like spirits attract like spirits. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you get out there, you be talking about how you were abused, you talk about how you were sexually, abused or molested or whatever the case is. And then it attracts other people as advertisement that are dealing with that same thing. And maybe they only know how to communicate their feelings through giving themselves physically to
Yeah.
someone. So it can become an advertisement for those type of interactions, but that's not the case. And so I had to learn that line, and I had to learn, when I could share, when would be a good time for me to share. And also when I'm getting epiphanies and revelations about my situation, that I could probably share that, months later. Maybe right now is not the best time for me to share. I need to sit with that between me and God for a while. And so it just made me get the courage to do it from the standpoint of I wasn't going to be a prisoner to getting beat up by myself.
I
'Cause that's
love
what I was
that.
doing. A lot of
Yeah.
times I was just being by myself and getting beat up about it, getting beat
I
up about.
think that's what most people do. I
Yeah,
really do. I think that's the enemy, and what he tries to get you alone, tries to
yeah,
get you kind of secluded away from everybody, not talking to anybody,
yeah,
and here just go wild. So
yeah.
I love that. I've also struggled with depression. Um and it is nothing to be played with. It
It's
is
not.
it is not. It is
Yeah,
not. It is not for the weak. I'll say
yeah.
that. It is literally a fight.
Oh,
And it's a
it's a
fight.
battle, man. It's
Welcome to the Exchange Place, the home for healing,